So probably the most interesting thing about the script itself was the character of Jan. And when you're, a young character actor like myself, and you're lucky enough to read a script whose central character is a young character guy who won, but more importantly, you just you don't get characters like this very often. It's like a blessing. Sometimes, I'll play a carjacker, or I'll play a this or a that or whatever, and this was a real person going through real things. And I think what drew me to Jan more than anything, because of course I'm personally not a terrorist, but what drew me to Jan is that the story doesn't necessarily have to be about the terrorism. It's not even really about what Jan used to be. It's more about what Jan wants to be. And the story itself and the character is all about redemption. And who can't attach themselves to that? Sure, I haven't blown up buildings, but I have done things that I'm not proud of. I have done things I wish I could go back and change. And as soon as I read the script, I knew that I understood Jan. Not literally, maybe, but I understood his desire. I understood that he wanted to make something better of himself than he was. And I think that, honestly, I think we all want that. Usually when I book a film, it's a couple weeks, it's maybe a month, but in this case, from the first time that I met Davd Antonelli and then when I was cast in the film until we actually shot it was almost a year, which was such a wonderful gift to be left with that script. And not only that, but he flew me out to London 3 times, the shoot included, but for script rehearsals and then for on-set rehearsals. So I really got to know the people, and got to know the places where we'd be shooting all this stuff. So I had all of this time to dissect this script and to figure out who Jan was, to fill in all the blanks in between all the scenes. I mean, most of the film does take place sort of over this arc of a period of time, but in between there, I still had to decide all of these things. And I had to figure out who Jan was. Sort of where he comes from, but I have to figure out, if he's an only child and what his parents were like and all of these things that the study of acting that I study, the method, sort of requires. And so I spent hours and hours writing just everything about Jan and where he grew up and what he was like and what he likes and what he doesn't like and what it was like when he met Rosalind and how that relationship formed and what his first bombing was like, and all of these things that they're not necessarily touched on in the script, but they're vital to the character. So I spent a ton of time doing that. I read an awful lot. I watched a lot of movies. I read the Journal of Eugene Delacroix because it's this beautiful, probably the best journal written by an artist. And Jan is truly an artist. At first he's an artist of fire, but then he really wants to, he's an artist. He's a painter. So I read that. I watched a lot of movies like Pollock that were about artists, sort of get into the head of an artist. I mean, I'm an artist, but I'm not that type of artist necessarily. And also I knew I was going to be doing a lot of love scenes, so I worked out for a year, which is really the longest period of time that I've ever committed myself to actually working out. And I'm a skinny guy, so it's kind of hard to build on the mass, but I think I did all right. If I'd had another year, I probably would have been super ripped, but I was pretty happy with how I looked and everything. But mostly I spent all that time figuring out who this guy was and what his relationships with all the other characters were and what they meant to him, and what everything that Jan wants, what Kevin wants that's in parallel to that, because that's a lot of what the method is about too. So it was not only figuring out who Jan was, but it was personalizing everything that Jan went through so that hopefully you're watching it and you're seeing somebody really living and somebody really living through something. And thank God sometimes you have a week to do that, but luckily I had almost a year, so I was really fortunate.